You know that feeling when you're like suddenly wide awake in the middle of the night?
Oh yeah, the classic 3 a.m. panic.
Right. And there's just this heavy, sort of unnameable dread sitting right on your chest. It's not necessarily about a specific deadline or, a singular crisis.
No, it's more ambient than that.
Exactly. It's more like the sensation of treading water in a dark, endless, and just incredibly deep sea.
That is a very accurate way to put it.
And we spend our days furiously paddling, right? Like trying to keep our heads above the surface with productivity hacks or therapy or just sheer willpower.
Right, we just treat this ambient anxiety as the inescapable baseline of modern existence.
But for today's deep dive, we are actually setting aside all those contemporary quick fixes.
We are indeed.
Yeah, we're turning to a spiritual blueprint written centuries ago that claims absolute unshakable peace is not only possible, but actively waiting for us.
A massive claim.
It really is. And, as we sit here preparing to explore this for you listening, I have to say, looking at the visual backdrop you brought today, it's striking.
I thought it fit the mood pretty well.
It's this seamless blend of a dusty, ancient library that somehow opens up into this vast, serene, cosmic star chart. It perfectly captures the scale of the text we're dealing with today.
Well, I mean, it's the only visual that felt appropriate for the sheer magnitude of what we're unpacking.
Because we're navigating from the incredibly intimate space of the human mind out into something like cosmically expansive.
Exactly. We're looking at a text that operates simultaneously on a microscopic psychological level and a macroscopic universal level.
So we're specifically diving into excerpts from the hymns of Guru Arjan Dev Ji.
Yes, the fifth Sikh guru.
And for you listening, we need to immediately clarify some of the technical language here just so we can fully appreciate the gravity of this work.
It can be a little intimidating at first glance.
Right, because the text is categorized under Raag Wadahans, fifth Mehla, chant, fourth house.
Which is a mouthful.
It sounds incredibly dense. So before we even look at the philosophy, how should we understand this categorization?
Well, it's actually a very precise indexing system. It tells us exactly how to experience the text.
Okay, so it's not just a title.
Not at all. A raag is a specific classical musical framework designed to evoke a very particular emotional state in the listener.
Oh, wow. So what does Raag Wadahans evoke?
Raag Wadahans is traditionally associated with a deep, profound sense of longing, often the sorrow of separation, but it's a sorrow that is transitioning toward immense joy.
That's a very specific emotional arc.
It is. And then fifth Mehla indicates authorship. That means this was composed by the fifth Sikh guru, Guru Arjan Dev Ji.
Who, he also compiled the first official edition of the Sikh scripture.
Yes, exactly. And then a chant is a specific poetic meter. It's usually a song of joy or praise, often related to marriage or spiritual union.
Okay, and the fourth house part?
That just refers to the musical beat or the rhythm. So, we aren't just reading a poem here.
Right, it's like a highly engineered sonic and emotional experience.
Exactly. It's designed to take the listener on a very specific journey.
A journey from that dark, terrifying water we mentioned earlier, straight into eternal peace.
Yes.
And, I mean, the text does not coddle the listener at all. It starts by demanding this monumental shift in how we operate.
It jumps right in.
It really does. The opening lines state, "Meeting with the Guru, I have found my beloved Lord God."
A powerful start.
And then immediately following that, the seeker says, "I have made this body and mind a sacrifice, a sacrificial offering to my Lord."
Right.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because, taking a modern, skeptical view, the word sacrifice immediately sets off alarm bells.
Oh, for sure. To modern ears, it sounds very intense.
It sounds morbid, or at the very least, like an invitation to entirely erase your own identity and agency. Like, are we talking about a literal loss of self here?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the text identifies the self, or, more specifically, the ego, as the exact thing that is drowning you.
Oh, interesting.
You mentioned the sensation of treading water in a dark sea. Well, the text actually calls this the terrifying world ocean, or bhavajal.
A terrifying world ocean.
Right. It's the vast, overwhelming expanse of worldly attachments, fears, and illusions. And the ego desperately wants to navigate this ocean on its own.
It wants to be in charge.
Exactly. It wants to control the uncontrollable. So the sacrifice mentioned here is not the destruction of your physical existence.
So it's not a literal death.
No. It's the pragmatic surrender of the illusion of control. Like, look at the causality in the text.
Okay.
By dedicating the body and mind to the guru's wisdom, the seeker immediately crosses the terrifying world ocean and, quote, shakes off the fear of death.
Wait, really? So the fear of death is entirely tethered to the ego?
That's the idea, yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. If I'm the one steering the ship through the storm, I'm terrified of the ship sinking because I perceive myself as the captain.
It goes even deeper than just shifting roles, though.
How?
Well, the fear of death is the ultimate existential terror.
Yeah.
Because it's the fear of the I ceasing to exist. The ego's entire job is self-preservation.
Right.
So by making the mind and body a sacrificial offering to the divine through the guru's guidance, you are essentially dissolving that isolated I.
Oh, I see. If the body and mind no longer belong to you but to the divine, then what is left to die?
Exactly. The entity that was terrified of death has been voluntarily surrendered.
Wow.
You can't drown in the world ocean if you are no longer desperately fighting the water.
That reframes surrender entirely. It's not defeat. It's like unburdening yourself from the impossible task of keeping yourself spiritually alive.
Exactly. It's a profound relief.
But, practically speaking, even if I mentally surrender the steering wheel to the guru, my body might still be in fight or flight mode.
Sure, the physical reaction is strong.
Right. Does the text explain how we actually process the residual panic, like the anxiety that's already running through our nervous system?
It does, actually. And it uses incredibly vivid sensory metaphors to explain this psychological transformation.
Okay, what does it say?
The text states, "My mind is soothed and calmed. The burning has ceased."
The burning.
Right. And this happens through a specific mechanism. The seeker talks about drinking in the ambrosial nectar and receiving the mantra of the Shabad, the true word, from the guru.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because the text uses the word burning, which feels just so universally recognizable.
Absolutely.
We might not use the term world ocean every day, but we know exactly what mental burning feels like.
Everyone knows that feeling.
It's the relentless, unquenchable thirst of modern ambition. It's the need for more validation, the doom scrolling, the anxiety of comparing our lives to everyone else's.
It's a psychological fever.
Yes. So how does the mantra act as the antidote to that fever?
Well, think about the nature of a burning fire. A fire requires constant fuel to stay alive.
Right.
In the context of the mind, that fuel is external stimulation. Desires, fears, the constant seeking of validation you just mentioned.
Just endlessly scrolling for a dopamine hit.
Exactly. The mind is constantly reaching outward. Now, the Shabad, which translates to the divine word or the true sound, operates as a profound internal intervention.
Okay.
The ambrosial nectar, or Amrit, represents the sweet, life-giving realization of the divine name.
So when the guru gives you this...
When the guru imparts this mantra, it provides a focal point so powerful, so completely fulfilling, that the mind just stops reaching outward for fuel.
Ah, wow.
The fever breaks because it starved the anxiety that was feeding it.
It's the ultimate pattern interrupt. It just snaps you right out of the frantic external search.
Exactly.
But, any meditation app can give you a momentary pattern interrupt. The relief usually lasts until you look at your phone again.
That's very true.
Does this text claim a temporary relief, or is it something more structural?
The claim here is entirely structural and permanent. Because of the nectar and the true word, the text declares, "My comings and goings have ceased."
Comings and goings.
Historically, and within Eastern philosophy, comings and goings refers to the cycle of reincarnation, birth, death, and rebirth. Escaping that cycle is liberation.
Right.
But applied to our immediate psychology, comings and goings perfectly describes the relentless ping-ponging of an anxious mind.
Oh, like bouncing from regretting a conversation you had 5 years ago to catastrophizing about a meeting you have next week.
Precisely. It is the exhaustion of endless wandering.
Yeah, exhausting is the word.
The text asserts that through the true word, this wandering comes to a complete halt, and the seeker enters a home of celestial samadhi.
Celestial samadhi.
Yes. Samadhi isn't just a passing feeling of calmness. It's a state of profound meditative absorption.
Okay.
It's the unshakable stillness that occurs when the mind finally merges with the object of its meditation.
So the relief described is the absolute joy of knowing the mind never has to frantically wander that terrifying ocean again.
Exactly.
A home of celestial samadhi. Just hearing that phrase lowers my blood pressure.
The beautiful concept.
But if this absolute permanent peace is the destination, we run into a major modern roadblock.
What's that?
Our contemporary mindset insists that a reward that monumental must be earned.
Ah, yes. The hustle culture of spirituality.
Exactly. We assume there's this rigorous criteria. You need to meditate perfectly, eradicate all your flaws, and somehow become an entirely enlightened, unproblematic person.
Right.
Yet when we look at the source material, the seeker says, I am worthless without virtue. All virtues are yours, O Lord.
Yeah.
And then follows it with, you did not consider my merits and demerits. You forgave me in an instant.
It's quite a contrast.
So what does this all mean? When the text says, I am worthless, my 21st century brain instantly cringes.
It goes against everything we're taught.
Literally everything. We're taught by every facet of modern psychology to build self-esteem, to recognize our own worth, to combat negative self-talk.
Absolutely.
How do we reconcile a text demanding we call ourselves worthless with the need for a healthy psyche?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we find that the text is diagnosing a disease that modern psychology sometimes accidentally feeds.
Wait, really?
How?
Well, when we're constantly working on our self-esteem, building up our sense of self-worth, and carefully tracking our personal growth, we're still completely trapped within the ego.
Oh, I see.
We're obsessively evaluating our own merits and demerits. We keep a spiritual scorecard.
Like, am I being mindful enough? Am I being kind enough?
Exactly. Have I earned a peaceful day?
Maintaining that scorecard is its own form of burning anxiety. We just dress it up as self-improvement.
It is a trap of our own making. What Guru Arjan Dev Ji is outlining here is not a mandate for self-hatred or low self-esteem.
Okay, so what is it? It's the concept of radical humility. By stating, I am worthless, all virtues are yours, the seeker is completely stepping out of the economy of spiritual transaction.
Stepping out entirely.
Right. They're refusing to play the game of earning salvation through their own limited, flawed human perfection. They recognize that any virtue they possess is merely a reflection of the divine.
So by dropping the scorecard entirely, the pressure is just removed. You're no longer auditing your own soul every 5 minutes.
And that leads to the most radical claim in this section of the text. Unearned grace.
Unearned grace.
The text explicitly says, you did not consider my merits and demerits. You forgave me in an instant.
Wow, in an instant.
The divine does not require you to present a perfect resume of good deeds before granting peace. The grace is instantaneous.
Which is so hard to accept.
It's incredibly difficult for the human ego to accept unearned grace because the ego desperately wants the credit for achieving enlightenment.
It wants to say, look how hard I paddled across the ocean. But the ocean was crossed the moment you gave up trying to swim and surrendered to the guru.
Precisely.
The barrier to peace wasn't that the seeker was heavily flawed. The barrier was the seeker's insistence on relying on their own flawed nature to save themselves.
That is the core mechanism of the transformation right there.
That makes so much sense.
The instant the burden of perfection is lifted, the anxiety of, am I good enough? Just vanishes.
Yeah.
And that makes room for the ultimate discovery.
Which brings us to the culmination of this spiritual map. We've moved from the terrifying ocean, through the surrender of the ego, into the quenching of the mind's fire and the reception of instant grace.
It's quite a journey.
And in the final stanzas, the imagery shifts from relief to absolute triumph.
It really does.
The text mentions obtaining the 9 treasures, which, correct me if I'm wrong, represents the ultimate spectrum of spiritual wealth in Eastern traditions, like meaning you lack absolutely nothing.
Yes. The Navniti, or 9 treasures, traditionally symbolize complete prosperity and fulfillment. In this spiritual context, it means the seeker has acquired every divine virtue and spiritual insight possible. The feeling of lack, that original thirst, is entirely eradicated.
And accompanying those treasures is a phrase that completely stopped me in my tracks.
Which one?
The text says, the unstruck melody resounds.
I want to linger on that metaphor for a second.
It's a beautiful metaphor.
Because in our physical world, all music, all sound, is the result of an action. A guitar string has to be plucked, a drum has to be hit, vocal cords have to vibrate against moving air.
Right, there has to be a physical interaction.
Sound is a reaction to a strike, but an unstruck melody. And Anhat Shabad is music playing without an instrument.
Exactly.
To me, that reads as an analogy for a joy that just exists on its own frequency.
I love that interpretation.
It doesn't require a good day at work. It doesn't require someone to validate you. It doesn't require any external event to trigger it. It is pure happiness without a cause.
That is a brilliant interpretation of the Anhat Shabad. It is the vibration of the cosmos, the eternal song of the divine.
When you are caught in the burning of the world ocean, the noise of your own anxiety, the comings and goings, is so deafening that you literally cannot hear this melody.
Because you're too busy splashing around.
Exactly. But once the mind enters that celestial samadhi, the silence allows the unstruck melody to be heard.
It's just there, waiting.
It's the realization of a joy that is completely independent of external circumstances.
And the independence of that joy is confirmed in the very final realization of the text.
Yes, it is.
After all this talk of crossing vast, terrifying world oceans, the seeker concludes, "I have found my husband Lord within my own home, and all my anxiety is forgotten."
This raises an important question regarding the entire geography of the spiritual journey we've just analyzed.
Oh, how so?
Think about the narrative our guru Arjan Devji has constructed here. We began with a seeker standing at the edge of a massive external threat, the terrifying world ocean.
Right.
They felt they needed a guide to cross this unimaginable distance. They felt they had to undertake a massive sacrificial journey to find the divine.
Yes, it felt epic in scale.
Yet, where does the journey actually end?
Within my own home. It ends inside.
It concludes entirely inward. The profound secret revealed at the end of this blueprint is that the destination was inside the seeker all along.
That is amazing.
The divine wasn't waiting on the far shore of a distant ocean. The divine was resting within the sanctuary of their own heart.
So then what was all the rest of it for?
Well, the guru's role, the ambrosial nectar, the radical humility, none of these were tools to travel a physical or even spiritual distance.
Oh, I see.
They were the tools required to strip away the illusion, the ego, and the noise that prevented the seeker from realizing what they already possessed.
It reminds me of someone frantically tearing their house apart looking for their glasses, blinded by the panic of losing them, only to realize they've been resting on their nose the entire time.
That's a perfect analogy.
The panic was real, the frantic searching was real, but the absence of the glasses was an illusion. The seeker was already carrying the divine. They just needed the guru to help them stop tearing the house apart.
That realization is why the text concludes with, "All my anxiety is forgotten."
Not solved, but forgotten.
Exactly. Not solved, not managed, but forgotten. When you realize the source of ultimate peace has been sitting in your own home the entire time, the anxieties of the external world simply dissolve.
They just evaporate.
They lose their power over you. The mind has finally found its true resting place.
It's just a profound transition. To summarize this deep dive for everyone listening, we have traced a truly remarkable psychological and spiritual map today.
We really have.
We started by confronting the ambient terror of trying to navigate the world ocean alone and recognizing the absolute necessity of the guru's guidance.
Stepping away from the ego.
Right, examining that difficult but necessary surrender, effectively removing the entity that fears death in the first place.
Exactly.
We explored how the true word acts as a powerful intervention, starving the mind's anxious burning and halting the exhausting cycle of comings and goings.
Finding that celestial samadhi.
Yes. And we challenged our modern sensibilities by embracing radical humility, dropping the exhausting scorecard of our own merits to receive unearned grace.
A huge paradigm shift.
Huge. And finally, we listened for that unstruck melody, realizing that the vast journey across the terrifying ocean was actually a journey inward, discovering the absolute peace of the divine residing within our own home.
It's a map that remains perfectly applicable to the human condition today.
Absolutely.
The external triggers for our anxiety will constantly change with the eras, but the internal architecture of fear and the cure for it, they remain timeless.
The cure is timeless. And, that brings us to a final lingering thought for you to carry into the rest of your week.
I'm curious what you're thinking.
Well, we've unpacked the revelation that the ultimate destination, the absolute peace of the divine, the unstruck melody, is located within your own home right now.
Right.
It's already inside you. But if that is the fundamental truth, what exactly is that terrifying world ocean you feel like you're drowning in every day?
Oh, that's a great question.
If the destination was never external, is it possible that the ocean itself isn't real? Is the terrifying storm you're battling just a hallucination generated by the ego, an illusion sustained entirely by your own anxiety? Something to ponder as you step back into your day. Until next time.